Hey everybody, welcome back. This is Novelists Unwind and I'm Johnnie Alexander. I'm really glad to be with you today and really excited to have Stacy Monson as our guest. Stacy and I met at the Dallas American Christian Fiction Writers Conference. I don't even know what year. It's been a while.
Been a while.
Been a while. We were both going to the same pizza party, one of the special events at the conference, and neither one of us knew anybody else, so we just kind of sat at the same table and got to talking. And she's so delightful, and neither one of us were published at that time. And she was telling me her story, and we got to laughing so hard. I believe we were, I wasn't a finalist, and maybe you were, but we had participated in a contest together, and that's why we were at the pizza party. It was the people who were part of that contest, and it was a lot of fun. So neither one of us won it.
But we had a good time.
We had a great time. And she's just become a special friend since then, and it's really cool. So from that time, tell us a little bit about your writing journey and how you have gone from just doing contests and that kind of thing to finally being published and an award-winning author and really making this your life.
My career.
Yes.
Oh boy, let's see. Excuse me. Oh boy, at that point, I'm sure I didn't have an agent because I think we were both,
We didn't. No, we talked about that when we were at the ACFW conference in Indianapolis. I remember we were talking about.
We didn't know in Dallas. So,
yeah, we didn't know in Dallas. So it was a couple years ago we were talking about agents.
Yeah, agents, and I did have an agent. I think it might have been in Indianapolis where I did connect with one, and that was a good experience. We worked together for 2 years, but it was at the time when my mom was really starting to go into her Alzheimer's, and I just needed to back away from writing for a while and really write for fun, not for publication, so I could focus on my mom and my sister and I were taking care of her, and so that we still chat online and things, so that was fine. But after my mom died, it was like, okay, I'm ready to get back into this. Do I want to look for an agent? I had never had a desire to self-publish. It was always, I'm not that desperate. I love to write, but I'm not desperate. But that was kind of the old thinking. And this was all about the time that self-publishing was really becoming an option and not, the last ditch effort. But I thought, well, I'll look for agents. And then through a series of events, ended up connecting with a number of people who had self-published or were in the process of that. And I still kind of thought, well, good for you. I don't want to do that. And then I just all of a sudden really felt God saying, this is the path you're going to go on. And, or that's what I thought anyway. And so I started getting familiar with all of that, and we found out, okay, I can do this, but I wanted to be sure that, I did it right. So I've connected with an editor, and I had people do my covers, and I now have 3 books that are published. They're all part of a series, and then a 4th one. We just had the cover created this past weekend.
Oh, how fun!
My edit's back from the editor, so that's always frightening.
Yes.
So that one will come out sometimes this spring. So that's kind of been my journey, and I'm not. I would certainly look at traditional publishing. It's still kind of one thing when you're self-published, you don't get into the big bookstores, but then there aren't that many big bookstores anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm still open to that, doing hybrid, whatever. We'll see where that goes. But that was my journey since being down in Dallas.
Since being in Dallas. And I do want to say for those of you who might be wanting to think about self-publishing and traditional publishing and all of that, it is a hard decision. And there are a lot of books that get self-published that probably shouldn't be. And so that's kind of, makes it difficult. But I love, Stacy, what you said. You still have an editor and you still have a professional cover designer. So the importance of that, of having somebody else look at your work. And
I've been in writing groups and people will bring something in to be critiqued and we'll work on it. And then it's like, well, there's still a lot of work to be done, but they're like, oh, this is good. I'm going to get that, get it published next week. And you think, oh, no. Because that doesn't help all of us. We all should be putting our best work out there, and you don't have to spend a ton of money to find a good editor. Yeah. You can spend a lot of money, but you don't have to. You don't have to spend a lot of money to get a cover designer, but you can tell when somebody has kind of whipped up their own cover, or they've hired somebody who knows something and I know nothing about graphic design or whatever. So it really is hard.
Yeah, it is. And two, I know from our conversation in Indianapolis when we were talking about different things, you had an opportunity to publish with a major company, but it was going to be an ebook only first, and decided not to take that because that was the same time I was with a different company being offered the same kind of contract, and I did go that direction, and you didn't, and I just, so it's like there's no one right path for anybody, but I think
people do a lot of things. I mean, there are a lot of hybrids or people that have only been traditional that maybe haven't gotten another book signed, and so and I think it's all okay now. I mean,
is.
Whatever your route is that is working for you. So
right. So, but you've gotten that, by having an agent, by having somebody being interested in your work, I think that's helpful too, because it does give you that, I have the talent for this, the craftsmanship for this. I know what I'm doing, and now I'm going to do it on my own, and I'm going to do it the right way. That's great. Yeah.
I wanted to make sure, and I still do, that whatever I put out there is the best I can make it. I don't want to say, ooh, I don't know that any of us are ever totally happy with it.
I know.
Because then if you pick it up later,
oh no.
Yeah, but at the time, is this the best cover I can put out there? Is this the best book I can do with where I am in my writing at this point?
Well, let's show these books. This is the Chain of Lakes series because Stacy's from Minnesota, which has tons of lakes. And so you're writing about a place that you're very familiar with and can certainly visit and research and all of that. Now, the lake system that you're using, is that an actual place?
It's actually called the Chain of Lakes. It's, now after all the Super Bowl hype, the problem is everything was so frozen that you couldn't really see it when they did the aerial shots. But there are lakes not far outside Minneapolis, well, actually right up to Minneapolis. And there are the lakes that are in book 1 in Shattered Image. The two main characters do some canoeing, and those are actually real lakes.
Great.
And they're all connected, and I've canoed it, and it's a really fun, right in the middle of the, maybe they've canoed it. You're right in the middle of the cities, in the suburb and the whatever, but you're still canoeing, and it's great. And so I wanted to put that in there. So.
Yeah. Well, show us Shattered Image. It's the first book in the series, and tell us a little bit about, I love that cover, and I love the book. I read it when it came out, so it's been a while. But tell us about why you wrote that book and a little bit about the story.
Okay. It's funny because, it's about a gal who's been a supermodel, and I have so much experience with it. Not for those of you who don't know me, or you can tell. I don't quite have that look.
Yeah, me neither.
But it was.
I'm too short. At least you have some height.
Yeah, I got the height, so that's about it. it's funny because, you know, the final story is a lot of times not what it started out to be.
That's true.
And this kind of morphed and morphed. But I did always want to write a book about a singer. I don't know why. And so I ended up having her be a fashion model, and the book opens with her getting fired. And so it's her journey, when that's all you know, is kind of your face and whatever. Now her journey is, now who am I and what can I do? His journey is as a small town Iowa guy who's been working to get his music career off the ground. And so his trajectory is just taking off for his career while hers is kind of crashing down. And it looks into what happens. We all look at, the famous people and we think, oh, cool. And boy, I'd like to be famous. And yet these are not happy people.
Right.
And the ones that are always in the spotlight. And not that I know a whole lot of famous people, but talking to people who have been models and what that's like, and what getting into the limelight is not what we think. And I think a lot of times we have this dream, and sometimes we attain it and we go, this is not what I thought, because we have this idealized version of it. And that story too is he does attain his dreams, but it's not what he thought. And now what? Because if that's all you've worked towards, what do you do at that point? And so for him, it's discovering a different path. For her, it's finding out who she is. And she creates a program called One of Me that she takes out into schools and things to talk about. Society tells us who we should be. You deserve this, and you need to have a certain detergent. You need to have a certain diaper. You need to have, the certain places to eat. Yeah. And so, but that's not real life. And so who does God want us to be?
Right.
And we're created with very specific DNA and gifts and talents and passions and dreams, that there's only one of us. So that's where the One of Me came from. And her purpose becomes trying to help, especially teens, understand that you being who you are is what matters. Whether you're tall, short, fat, skinny, you have one arm, you have, whatever, that's just be the best at whatever it is that you are. Doesn't mean you don't strive towards goals and dreams and things, but not letting the world decide what that is. You decide what that is.
I think that's such an important message too now. And the wonderful thing about your story is that there is this deep message to it, but it's a novel and you're not preaching. You're showing these two characters, like you said, one on that downward trajectory, the other one upward, and yet they're both unhappy and both trying to figure out things and are going to have to make decisions about their life based on their experiences and their talents. And because there's part of that too, God gives you a talent, you want to use it for his glory, and then but when does that sometimes become a not so good thing because you're not really using it for his glory, you're using it for your
your own glory.
Yeah. And there was a lot in there. I remember when I read it, being and wondering, you must have done a lot of research on how production companies work, recording studios and all of that. It seemed to me like I felt like I was entering a world I wasn't familiar with, and the details just seemed so.
Well, Minneapolis is, when I first started writing and entering, opening chapters or whatever in contests, it was funny because people would be like, Minneapolis, there's no music there. It should be in Nashville, whatever. It's like, Minneapolis is a huge arts community. So we have the Guthrie, we have a bazillion different kinds of theaters. Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, they did all of the people would come to them. Josh Groban would come here, and I think he still does. I can't think of who he works with that's here. Janet Jackson, all those people would come to Minnesota to do the recording. Obviously, we have Prince. We have lots. So there's a lot of music that happens here. It's just not Nashville.
Right.
And it's freezing dang cold. So I think people, and there's a comment in there about who wants to go there? It's freezing. Yeah. It's not freezing all the time. I think we have a high of 6 though. So, but and then I know people who have done or are still doing modeling, and so finding out from them too. A lot of the comments that she makes are comments that they made.
Wonderful.
Just being the hanger. You're virtually invisible. You're just there to wear the clothes, and they talk about you, and you're right there. But they talk about what's wrong with you, and how that's not going to work. And it's like things you can't do anything about. And so it was really fascinating that, it's like, wow, that you stand there and people tell you what's wrong with you, and you're supposed to go, okay.
Yeah, so it did. I mean, there was certainly that authenticity. I felt when I read it, and it was really cool to see that. Sometimes we're freezing up, so I'm switching the thing. So we'll see how that works when the recording's done. I'm sorry if you're watching and it looks like things are going crazy, but I'm in a place where internet can sometimes be unstable, and I think that's what the cause of that is. I apologize. Let's then go to the second book.
Okay.
Am I right though that the second book is the one I knew about first? So did you write the second book before you wrote the first book?
Yes.
I thought so.
Yes. This is the one that we talked about.
That we were giggling about, because as you would pitch it to people, they were going like, what?
What? Yeah. Oh my gosh. The pitch from hell, so to speak. Yeah.
And why was that, Stacy? Tell us the premise for this book.
Oh my gosh. That was hysterical.
And show it again, because I don't know we got a really good.
Yeah. I can hold it up in front of me. Beautiful. So it's a dancer. On the back we have the guy that plays guitar. I seem to have a music thing going.
Yeah.
I played flute for anybody who cares. But this is about a gal who was a dancer and was in a car accident that she was the guardian for her younger siblings. Mm-hmm. I suppose I don't have to give the whole book away, but ends up in an accident and can't dance anymore. So again, it comes back to, who am I? I'm a dancer. It's all I've done. It's all I want to do. Her mother owned a dance studio. She taught lessons. So dance was her whole world. And it was actually from the Dallas, no, it wasn't. It was the Denver conference where I just was kind of stuck with this story. And I met Frank Redmond, and we had been chatting online because that was my very first one, was the Denver one. And we ended up standing next to each other in the lunch line, which is such a God thing, because we didn't know what each other looked like, so we never found each other. And he was the one that said, well, I think the guy needs to be an ex-con. I'm like, ex-con? He can't be an ex-con. He's going to be like a youth director,
Mm-hmm.
And it turned out that having him be an ex-con was the best route to go, because of course it gave him a great backstory. And so for him, his whole life had been derailed through bad choices. And so his dream has been to create some kind of a place, a house, he was hoping, and eventually that's what he did, for kids off the street, where they could come after school, where they could just be themselves, and they could also hear a message of salvation.
Sure.
But they'd get tutoring, they'd have AA meetings or Al-Anon meetings or both. So he really could meet kids where he'd been and what might have helped him. And there are these different teens in the story, and something happens to one of the teens in the story. And the gal I was pitching to just went berserk. No, that absolutely can't happen. You can't do that. And I'm trying to explain to her, but it has to happen. It's a pivotal moment. Oh my gosh, she flipped on everybody. I can remember everybody in the room looking at us.
Oh
I
no.
want to die. Yeah. But it got published anyway. I just did it myself. But this was the first one, and yet because it's a little, it's not a harder book to read. It's just the other one's a little lighter, and so we decided to start with that one. This one is a little grittier, not terrible. It's not like it's bad language stuff, but some stuff happens that's just kind of a little different.
Well, I need to read it. Yeah, I've got to fill in those gaps. I read the first book and the third book, so I need to get the second one.
Find out what happened in between.
Yeah. But yeah, I remember us laughing about that because you say, yeah, the dancer with only one leg, and you said nobody seems to want that story.
I know. People are missing legs and arms and things. They're still people. Why can't I write about that? And they're like, oh no, and that actually, of the three of them, well, the third one hasn't been out that long, but that's the one that's won the most awards. And I think because it's the most realistic, and people identify, maybe not with what she's going through, but with those issues and the grief and the and kind of how do you come back from all that. And she's angry at God, and so that's a big piece of it, is how does she come around. And it's not easy. It's not like, oh, it's all happy, okay, now I like God again. I mean, she's pretty angry through a lot of the book.
I think that's, true in the two stories of yours that I've read, is that there is just this, again, the authenticity is there with these characters, because they are on this faith journey too, in different ways. And yet, it's not like it all is sunshine and rainbows and unicorns at the end. There's still things that they're going to have to deal with, that you just see that very real emotional journey with them, and I become really engaged with it. And as a writer, it's hard sometimes to read a book and turn that editor off. When you're reading someone else's novel, that editor is still sometimes there. And I always appreciate it when I find that I've just been reading and it's so real and I'm so engaged with the characters that editor has kind of gone away. So I could just enjoy it.
Which is nice, because boy, when you start writing, it can ruin reading for you.
Yeah, because you're always, I would have worded this way, or whatever. But So then the third book, let's chat about that one just a minute. Phenomenal.
Called The Color of Truth. And on the back there's just a coffee shop, but that's because a coffee shop plays important. And she's a gal that grew up in a real tough situation, and believes the lies that she was told, that she's stupid, that she can't do anything right, that and what we find out throughout the story is the people telling her this weren't exactly healthy themselves. And so their junk is coming out on her. And he is he kind of had a rough upbringing, and then got himself turned around, and then everything kind of implodes. And for me, the romance is almost secondary. And
I would agree. Yeah,
it's hard to categorize it, because it's sort of women's fiction with a strong romantic element, or just contemporary fiction. That relationship, it develops slowly. I mean, they're not hitting romance right away in the book. And so they're developing friendship, they're learning from each other. For the third one, it takes a long time to get to the romance part, because to me it's almost secondary, in that they all have to grow to a point where they can have a healthy relationship. And so it's always been hard to say, well, it's a romance, but it's not a romance. Certainly isn't a category romance.
No, definitely not. Absolutely not. No.
So it kind of does it just, I would hope, evolves kind of naturally. So
I think so. to me, it was so interesting, I mean, it's not like there's just one little problem that they have or one even major problem that they have. There's just these multiple things that they both have. And in this one, as I was reading, I thought, wow, Stacy did a really good job of keeping secrets, because lots of times with beginning writers, and you speak to writers, I speak to writers, and you have to tell them, don't feel like you have to tell the reader everything right up front. You need to spread that out, because that's why they want to continue reading. And there were things that were later, I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't see that coming, and I don't want to give any spoilers, but I was kind of annoyed with Sam, because I thought he's not being very responsible here. And then I find out why and if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll tell you afterwards. Then I realized why he wasn't feeling a responsibility I thought he should be feeling. And I thought that was so genius not to reveal that early on when you could have, but to kind of that.
Well, sometimes I can keep, you get carried away with keeping that the big thing till way at the end. In the book, I just got back from the editor now. I've only read some of the comments, but she says, okay, it's so vague, so it's that balancing act of, okay, there is something and it will play a part, but you just don't need to know yet. So it's hopefully you didn't get too annoyed with them. But.
Well, it was just like, they're
I'm gonna slap that boy.
Talk to Stacy about this, and then I was like, oh, okay. And then on the flip side, let's talk about exceptions for a minute, because the other thing, we tell people is not to do like backstory too soon. And again, that's kind of what we're saying. Don't do. So here's some little writing tips if you're interested in writing. But you have a flashback kind of right at the beginning of the book, but it was seamless, and it was. When you go back to what, you've got her in the hospital, so that's the opening, so that's not really kind of a spoiler. She's in the hospital, she's been beaten, and then you go right back and we're in that scene where she's being beaten, and you did it extremely well. So, there are exceptions, and if you're exceptional, you can do that, because it was seamless. I mean, it was just, but my editor was still a little bit on right then, so I'm looking at this thinking, wow, how did she do that so well? Because it was done very well. It wasn't jarring or anything.
Well, it's to open a book where somebody's getting beat up is like, I'd go,
you wouldn't want to do that. No.
Yeah. So, and it's not real graphic or anything, but I couldn't start. So thank you.
Nice you did a really good job. So she really is she's an excellent writer. So you want to get her book, start with the first one. And then the fourth one is coming. But now, is it part of this Chain of Lake series too, or are you doing something different?
Yeah, the fourth one's coming out. It's called Open Circle. It is just a standalone story, and a lot of it is based on the time of going through the Alzheimer's with my mom.
Okay.
It's a social worker who's been promoted to be the director of a program, but the caveat is it's going to close in 4 months if she doesn't turn it around. So that her whole thing is she loves seniors, and it's based on one of my dear friends who has been a social worker. We met in college getting our social work degrees. She actually went on to do something with her social work. And knew immediately she wanted to work with seniors. And my grandma had lived with us my whole life, and so I was like, I'm kind of done with that.
Yeah.
But she loves, to this day, loves seniors. And there's actually an adult day program in Hopkins, a suburb here, called Open Circle. And I worked with those people. And part of why I wrote is I wanted people to know what adult day programs are. It's not like babysitting. It's not daycare for adults. It's they work really hard to make sure that these people who have some form of dementia, everybody doesn't have Alzheimer's.
Right.
And some of them don't have anything. They just need to be in a social situation because they're so isolated. But it's looking at what is an adult day program and what does that offer people, and why would you want your family member to do that? And we need so many more of them. We need more programming that keeps seniors stimulated and interested in learning. Just because you get old doesn't mean, you know, you don't want to still learn things or have
Right.
fun. And so it's got some quirky people that are kind of composites of people I met through my mom's journey. And as awful as Alzheimer's is, and my mom's journey, you know, 8 or 9 years, and she wasn't talking by the end. It was fairly awful, and yet there were times you had to laugh. You know, I mean, you just can't cry all the time. But she still would have a spark of her old self was in there, and she couldn't really talk. But you'd say, they called her the Cookie Monster. And they'd say, Joyce, do you want a cookie? And she'd nod, and then she'd say, two. You know, so it was so funny that we knew that. And we'd say, well, how about one to start with? And off she'd go with her cookie and be happy.
Oh.
So it's not just terrible stuff. And so wanting to portray that realistically and hopefully in a way that people kind of walk away going, you know, yeah, thank you, God, for people who give their life to seniors.
Absolutely.
Care for them. Yeah, so that's my next book. It'll be out in the next couple of months.
Wow. And then what's going to be after that? Do you have a plan or taking a break?
I do. I have a whole series called My Father's House. And I'm still working out all the details. At this point, it'll have 5 books to it. And it's following a family. In this family, there are 6 kids. The first 5 are girls. Mm-hmm. And they're like 30 down to about 22-ish. And they're all adopted. But they don't know that.
Wow.
And how did that happen? So it's kind of a This Is Us meets I gotta come up with a good adoption thing or whatever, so that we're going to be bouncing back and forth. So we're going to find out by following the parents why did they keep these secrets, because each of the girls has kind of a background that they just didn't want them to be hurt by. Mm-hmm. And one of them, the father, actually the biological father, tried to kill her, but the mother got in the way. He killed the mother. So of course you don't want her to know that. And 2 of them are raised as twins. They aren't actually twins because they aren't related. You know, so it's each of their journeys to find out again, who are we? Because I think that's at the core of everything we do is, who am I? Who am I supposed to be? The world tells me something, but who did God create me to be? You know, and then the nature versus nurture things. So.
Oh, that's interesting too. Yeah, that is.
Well, that's coming down the pike, but yeah.
Yeah, that's well, and I know, like, I saw on your website, you know, it seems like a theme both in your writing and in your speaking ministry is, there's an extraordinary God at work in ordinary lives, and I just love that thought. So
I think most of us don't have big, fancy, exciting lives. I mean, you really think like, nobody make a TV show about me. Right. That lasts about one get out of the pilot. But God is at work all the time, and we just aren't being aware enough to see it. So that's part of what I talk to groups about is the ministry is called Wings, and so, you know, who are you and who gets to decide, and then it goes on from there, discovering, identifying your gifts and your passions and your dreams, and, you know, always keep learning, never stop growing. God is your launch and your landing pad. So everything should kind of start from there, that foundation, and that's where we land when things aren't going well. Right. And all of a sudden I'm drawing a blank on the S.
I didn't write them down, but I did say, but they are on Stacy's website, Stacy Monson. It's MONSON.com, so you can.
You can find out what the S is because I'm just blank. How's that for a good promo?
Oh no, but it was great, and it's fun to see how your writing and that just seemed to be intertwined with this overarching idea. So that's really cool that God gave you that one message that you can put out in different ways. Music talents, writing talents, and speaking talents for that. So that's great.
Yeah.
Well, we'll probably need to wrap up because I could just chit chat with you, as you know, because we've kind of done that sometimes. When you're done with the book, when you finish that novel, you've typed the end, it's all done, ready to send to the editor, how do you unwind?
Chocolate and my hot chocolate. Other people drink coffee.
Ooh, no, I drink hot chocolate. I don't like coffee.
Yeah, so. I don't either. No,
yeah.
People say, how can you drink hot chocolate in the summer? Well, how do you drink coffee in the summer?
Exactly.
So yeah, I like my chocolate. I don't tend to, I tend to kind of move into the next project.
Do you really?
So my unwinding is now not so much writing, is just thinking, kicking ideas around about what am I going to do next, and where am I going with that that storyline, and then just spending time with the grandbabies.
Yes, because you've got 3.
We have 3 now. Yep, my daughter we have one that will be 4 on Valentine's Day, and then a 2-year-old and a newborn. So it's best. Yeah.
It is, isn't it?
That's my favorite unwind, is just hanging with them.
Yeah. I've got 5, and they're between, the youngest just turned 6 and the oldest will soon be 12. So yeah, and I miss having babies. I miss having a baby, but they're so fun. I mean, they're all fun in their own ways. I really miss not being around them all the time.
Yeah, and it's a whole different thing because you're so worried about them as you're raising them, and how are they going to turn out? Now, as a grandparent, it's true. You know, when you hear somebody said once, if I knew how fun grandparenting would be, I'd have started
have the grandkids first.
Yeah, because it's like, this is great, and you realize how much of life is really not important.
That's true. Yeah,
we get caught up in the little things. And we need to celebrate family.
We do. Well, Stacy, this has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate you being with us. I truly, highly recommend that you get Stacy's books, the Chain of Lakes series. They're available, of course, on Amazon. I suppose other online retailers too. Yep. Beautiful covers, beautiful work, and she is someone who really is doing the indie publishing the right way, and her writing is phenomenal. So great storytelling.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, glad you're here. So see you next week, or 2 weeks from next time we have an interview. Thank you so much for being with me. Bye-bye.